Holy heck, what's up, peeps? Welcome back to the channel. I'm not gonna lie to you, this coffee cup is actually empty. I've drank all my coffee today, and I just want to prepare all of you guys for the mental warfare we're about to put ourselves through as a Call of Duty versus Warzone debate has somehow sparked back up over a random podcast and people just farming impressions, myself included, as we had a couple random guys out there. It's the Drop Shot podcast. Hey, trust me, we're probably gonna have some videos in the future on this one as they went viral for saying that Warzone players are more skillful than CDL pros. And let me tell you, this sent everyone into a tiffy. So before we get into it and get really riled up, let's hear what these two had to say.
Do you think Biffle could do pretty well in the CDL?
Of course he could.
Hey,
a lot of CDL
yeah.
players always think they can't. I constantly see that argument. CDL players are always like maybe Biffle could compete, but he wouldn't even be close to a top player in the league. And it's like, they think he doesn't have the skill set. I'm sorry, I'll never agree with them and I'll never fully understand their reasoning. But I think being the best Warzone player in the world is way more skillful than being the best CDL player in the world. Maybe that's a hot take for CDL players, but they act like there's so much strategy. You sit there and hold an angle and wait for some guy to run around the corner. How do you think Biffle would not be able to do that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
You literally sit there and hold an angle.
Yes.
It's not that hard. So much more thought goes into playing Warzone, so much more strategy over the length of the match.
And yeah, that sure is something. Upon rewatching this 3 or 4 times, I think for me, the biggest deterring factor about their statement, like I think there could be some semblance of something of truth in that statement, but the way they downgrade CDL pro players the entire time, saying that, you know, bar for bar, a good Warzone player is more skillful than a CDL pro player. And I'm just sitting back here thinking, maybe I'm crazy. These are two completely separate games. Why is anyone making a judgment between Warzone pros and Call of Duty pros? We have had this debate back and forth, and let me just stand firm before we get into maybe some other clips in the future. Warzone players are good at Warzone. Call of Duty players are good at Call of Duty. When they come together in some sort of middle environment or the other person's environment, it comes down to who has spent more time in that game. Warzone players are most of the time probably going to beat Call of Duty pros in Warzone until I do believe if Call of Duty pro players spend enough time in Warzone, they would eventually be better than most of the top Warzone people currently. I do believe that, but I also believe some of the top Warzone streamers, if they dedicated the amount of time these CDL pros have throughout their lives, they could compete in the CDL. Is that a crazy statement to make? Like, we're pitting both of these sides against each other and falling for these like bait topic discussions, and I'm just sitting back getting angry. Like, are we? I feel like there's nothing else to talk about, so we end up talking about these things. So what do you guys think about this debate back and forth? And as always, let's read some comments because a lot of top people also responding. We had Octane throw out a response. We had Nadeshot. We had Methods. A bunch of Call of Duty pros. Obviously pretty upset with this, rightfully so, the way they were degraded by these two random guys. CDL Intel tweeted this out. A lot of people responding. Jacob Hale saying podcast should require an IQ test before allowing anyone to start one. Hitch directly adding Repulse, who brought up the previous discussion we talked about on this channel with Biffle being the main Warzone pro people think can hang in the CDL, saying, look what you've done. You got to get them together. KCP Nick says you can really tell who started playing Call of Duty during the pandemic. And then a common response out there was actually Scump won a solo Warzone tournament with no practice. It's been proven. And a lot of people responding with Scump stuff. I just want to say, I don't think that's the best counter argument. Call me crazy if you want to, but Scump won a solo YOLO drop, did insanely well, did not fall into the Riot Shield meta. Guys, I watched it live, but that was not like the best example of a tournament won by a Call of Duty pro in the Warzone space. It's not like an official an actual Warzone tournament. It's a solo YOLO drop, one time through 100 of the best players in the world. Part of it's luck, where you drop, who you run into. I do think Call of Duty pros would dominate Warzone pros given enough time. I just don't agree with the Scump counter argument. I think it's easy pickings, okay? And then Octane saying, anyone having access to podcast equipment is the downfall of humanity. But Nadeshot actually had the lengthiest response and explanation of anyone saying, say you land Lowtown on Urzikstan, take the size of that drop zone, and now cut that whole area in half. You just spawn in there for 10 minutes against 4 players as good or better than Biffle and try to get in a hill for 250 seconds before they do. No smokes, no third parties. You're just squaring up against 4 of the best players in the world. Would you rather do that on stage for $1 million, or would you rather run for 20 minutes on a map the size of Narnia, avoiding gunfights and praying to God you get circle pull on final zone? Honest and sincere question. Kind of playing on the RNG of BRs and a lot of the other factors that go into it, which I think can't actually help the other side of the argument. The amount of variables in RNG you deal with in BRs, I think adds a layer of complication. So maybe not like the most perfect example, but showcasing it takes a lot of skill. What they do, these Call of Duty pros are the best players going up against the best players, and there are a lot more variables to competitive COD than I think casuals can account for. And then further explaining, there is certainly nuance to the picture I just painted, but regardless, I still think the picture is clear enough. I don't doubt that there are a handful of players who compete in Warzone that could play at the highest level in Challengers or the CDL, but the argument about which is more difficult is a pretty easy decision. And then Dashy saying these pubs are really starting to get to y'all's head. Methods had responses, and well, a lot of responses from just about everyone in the entire COD scene. My biggest gripe with this initial clip is not the fact that it's a random podcast. I almost feel bad for like random people who get clipped out there because they didn't maybe know that this was gonna go viral, but hopefully it works out for them. My biggest thing is like they were just so easy to knock professional Call of Duty players. Like they pretty much said it takes no skill, that you're just holding angles in the CDL, which if you don't enjoy watching Call of Duty competitively, maybe I can understand where you're coming from and you don't know how complex and how competitive that is. Like you're talking about the top 50 players in the world going head to head each and every week. And yes, they each know the maps and the spawns and everything to a top tier, and they still have to somehow outdo their opponent time and time again in a repetitive process that has to be literal brain rot at times. Like it's not just holding angles, okay? It's not just gun skill. That is a really stupid thing to say. Anyone else? Like that's just at the end of the day, not giving respect to pro players and what they've put into this since they were probably 6 years old picking up a Call of Duty controller for the first time. All right. So I think they could have worded their argument a bit better. At the end of the day, I'm going to stand by what I said. Warzone pros are good at Warzone. Call of Duty pros are good at Call of Duty. If vice versa, the top players in both of those games wanted to dedicate time to the other game, they would still be good at the other game. Is that crazy to say? If this video breaks like 50 comments, 100 comments, I don't know, a couple hundred likes, I will do a full breakdown of the 5-minute segment that these two had on CDL versus Warzone, and some of it is complete comedy. Like some of it, they're just spitting to spit, and I would love to do a little reaction. So take care, leave a comment down below. How do you guys feel? And have a good rest of your day, all right? We got some juicy stories coming to this channel. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Buff for being here. If you guys like a nice organic caffeine, I drink it every day. Code LUCKY down below. Till next time, take care. Okay, bye-bye.